I'ma keep winning, winning. I'ma keep winning, winning. Ooh. I'ma keep winning, winning. You can try to save yourself, but you only go.
What's going on, guys? JK back on another video, and today I'm going to be looking at one of the main guys that do mock drafts, and everybody should be looking at that has all the inside sources, Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft. But before we get into it, please make sure to like the video, comment down below anything you agree or disagree with that I talk about in this video, and make sure to subscribe to the channel for future NFL content that I'm going to be putting out. So jumping in this is Daniel Jeremiah's 3.0, pretty much his post-free agency mock draft, so some things have changed and some sources that Daniel Jeremiah has. It's always good to look at his because he was a former NFL scout. He's closer to a lot of the teams. Him and Mel Kiper are kind of the two that I end up looking at a lot to make sure to kind of see where teams are leaning and kind of looking at. So every once in a while they're wrong, some of them are right. It's just how mock drafts go. So we're gonna go ahead and jump into it. And number one, not really any surprise here. Tennessee, they're going with Cam Ward at number one, and it's pretty much a solid at this point, in my opinion, that Cam Ward is going to be the number one overall pick. It's whether it's the Titans picking here to take Cam Ward or it's another team trading up to take him at number one. Cam Ward's going to end up being the first overall pick. And it looks like Tennessee is going to be staying put and picking Cam Ward because you could tell it based on what they did in free agency. They went out and they signed a bunch of offensive line and a couple other pieces to be able to help out with quarterback play. And they pretty much didn't address quarterback whatsoever. And there's some sources that Will Levis is on the trade block. They ended up letting Mason Rudolph go, didn't bring in a single quarterback. So it kind of just leans toward them taking Cam Ward. Cam Ward's seen as the number one quarterback in this class, so it just makes sense to be able to take him there at one. And it's pretty much solidified at this point. Number two, the Cleveland Browns going with Abdul Carter. This makes sense. Even though they brought back Myles Garrett, even though you bring him back on that big deal, you still want to have two ideal edge rushers to be able to be a combination between both of them. So having Abdul Carter and Myles Garrett would be one of the best pass rushing duos in the NFL. Now they still have to figure out the quarterback situation. They ended up trading for Kenny Pickett, but that's not really a problem solver there. You're still looking for a quarterback. There's still Aaron Rodgers, who's probably going to the Steelers. And you still have Russell Wilson out there trying to decide on where he's going to go. So you could end up, bringing him in. But they still have that whole Deshaun Watson situation going on. And I would think a lot of the rumors are saying that they might end up going quarterback here at number two. So it's going to be interesting to see over the next month how they end up developing because I think they either go with one of the three, Cam Ward, Abdul Carter, or Travis Hunter. So those are a couple of the main guys that they're going to end up going. But the top four is pretty much solidified, in my opinion. I think it's the top four picks are going to be Cam Ward, Abdul Carter, Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter. So we're going to speed through these a little bit just because it's kind of the same guys that we are who expecting. It's just depending on the order that these four guys end up coming off the board. And with the Browns taking Abdul Carter and pairing him up with Myles Garrett, the Giants are going to end up taking Shedeur Sanders. Now, the Giants here, they're really hoping that one of those guys go in the top two and Shedeur ends up falling because they're really wanting their quarterback. They still haven't brought in anybody yet, really, that they feel confident in at all. So they're really hunting, trying to get either Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, and it's mainly going to have to be Shedeur Sanders here. And since the Browns end up taking Abdul Carter, he's available here at three in the scenario. So Brian Dable, Joe Shane, their GM, is on the hot seat. They're looking for somebody that can come in and win some games and hopefully make an immediate impact for them so that they can end up saving their jobs because their jobs are pretty much on the line. And Shedeur Sanders kind of does that for them. He's able to come in and he's kind of more the ready now quarterback between the two. He's not as toolsy and he still has his own issues. So he could end up slipping, but I think it's pretty much solidified that he's going to go at least top three. And this is kind of the lowest point that he's going to end up going as the Giants taking him here at three. And the Patriots end up getting their dream scenario and getting Travis Hunter because they haven't brought in any weapons for Drake May yet. They ended up swinging out on Chris Godwin. I really thought Chris Godwin would end up going to the Patriots, but he ended up signing back with the Bucks. So they really haven't brought in any weapons. They also need a offensive lineman. Really, they didn't bring in a left tackle. They brought in Morgan Moses on the right side. So At number 4, it's either Travis Hunter or it's one of the left tackles that they could end up taking, like Mimbu. But here in this scenario, they end up taking Travis Hunter. He could be a weapon. I think this is one of the few spots where he could play both. Some teams aren't going to let him end up playing both, but I think here in the Giants gives him an opportunity to come in and actually play both if he really wants to. I think he's mainly going to be a wide receiver and arguably be one of the better wide receivers in this class and be seen as the number one wide receiver on many people's boards. So he comes in, the Patriots are pretty much giving Drake May a weapon. They're pretty much hoping that Hunter or Abdul Carter are on the board in this draft and they're not taken in the top three so that they could end up taking whichever one ends up falling to them. And if both of them end up going in the top three, then they're probably going to end up looking at left tackle to be able to protect Drake May. So this one's a little bit of a shocking one. The Jacksonville Jaguars go with Jalen Walker. Jalen Walker is one of those guys that a lot of people hate and a lot of people love. He's kind of a tweener. In the history of the draft the last couple of years, when there's a guy that's a tweener that's kind of seen on defense in multiple positions, they don't really work out. For example, Isaiah Simmons. For example, Zayvon Collins has kind of struggled the first couple of years. Ironically, both those teams were the Cardinals that took both those prospects. Jalen Walker coming in here, getting selected by the Jaguars. I think the Jaguars, it's weird. Most people have him mocked Mason Graham. I think that's the most ideal pick here for the interior. But at this point, if you're taking Jalen Walker, he's kind of just going to be more of a rotational piece to add depth to the edge and be, come in rotation. Daniel Jeremiah mentions here that they do have Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker there already, but they would use Jalen Walker more on passing downs and move Trayvon Walker to the inside and let Jalen Walker be on the edge and be that edge rusher. I think no matter what team drafts Jalen Walker, he's going to be an edge player and he's going to end up going after the quarterback. I don't really see him as the off-ball linebacker they ended up playing at Georgia at the beginning of his career. But he is a little bit smaller, so that's going to turn some guys away. So really just it's going to be a weird pick. I don't think you take a rotational edge piece that comes in only on passing downs at the number 5 pick. I think I would rather have Mason Graham, somebody to solidify the interior of the defensive line instead of moving Trayvon Walker to the inside, because then you can keep those two guys on the edges. I don't necessarily like this. I see Joe Walker as more of a late first round guy, and this is a little bit high for me, and I'm not necessarily taking a primarily third down pass rushing defense end at pick number 5. I'm taking a more serious position of need for this Jaguars team, like a Mason Graham here. Number 6, the Raiders. They end up going Ashton Jeanty, which this is kind of starting to become kind of like the chalk pick. You have Geno Smith at 34. Ashton Jeanty would come in and make his life a lot easier. They do have a decent offensive line that's getting better over the last couple of years. They ended up drafting guys like Jackson Powers Johnson. They still have Colton Miller. So it's kind of growing and starting to mesh a little bit better. So Ashton Jeanty could come in behind that offensive line and be effective. Now, the argument here with Jeanty to the Raiders would be how much better does a running back really make that Raiders team? The Raiders are one of the worst rosters in general, talent-wise, in the NFL. So putting a running back, kind of like what Saquon was on the Giants, he doesn't have that huge of an impact on the Giants. He was injured a lot. He had dealt with a lot of hits. The offensive line wasn't very good. The team wasn't very good. But then he goes to the Eagles. Now he's the best running back in the league. With Jeanty going to the Raiders, how much of a difference is he actually going to make for that team? He's not going to make a crazy 6-win difference for him, I wouldn't think. But maybe he does. And I could easily see Pete Carroll falling in love with a crazy defensive athlete like he's done in the past with like a Jordan Brooks, like he did in Seattle a lot. So I could easily see them reaching on a defensive guy here at number 6 that Pete Carroll ends up just really adoring and falling in love with as an athlete and as a player. He's done it in the past when he was with Seattle, and I could easily see him doing it again here at 6. The New York Jets going with Armand Membu. I'm really starting to like this pick. The Jets, I think, are going to go 3 ways. It's either going to be Tyler Warren, it's going to be Armand Membu, or it's going to be Ted McMillan at wide receiver. I think those are the 3 options that they really have. And if you look at it, they let Morgan Moses go in free agency, And they have four pieces on that offensive line that they really like, four young pieces. You have John Simpson, you have Joe Tippmann, you have Elijah Vera Tucker, and you have Olo Fashanu. Those are all four great young pieces that are going to grow together and could be a very dominant offensive line group. So you go ahead and you slide Armand Membu in there at right tackle. I think that they're going to be very defense and run heavy team focusing with Aaron Glenn coming in. And how do you run the ball? You go and get a dominant offensive lineman to be able to go and play right tackle for you and be able to pretty much solidify all five spots of the offensive line and let Breece Hall pretty much run for days behind him and be a physical football team. And that's what Armand Membu is. He's physical, he has size, and he's athletic. But there has been some rumors here that they really do like Jackson Dart. I don't necessarily see Jackson Dart going in here at 7. I think that if they do take Jackson Dart, I would see them trading up in the first round with their second round pick towards the end of the first round to take Jackson Dart. But you never know. It's a weak class, so you could see some pretty shocking stuff, and all the guys are pretty similarly rated. But I would think that they would either go Membu, McMillan, or Warren. Moving on to the next one, number 8. The Panthers get a great player to fall into their lap and Mason Graham. You could tell in free agency that they were trying to solidify the interior defensive line and definitely needed upgrades because they tried to go out and pay Milton Williams 20 million a year, but then he ended up going to the Patriots. So here Mason Graham pretty much just falls into their lap because other teams in front of him want other positions of need. And the Panthers have a really bad defense. This first pick is either going to be a receiver or it's going to be a defensive player, preferably on the defensive line. And that's what we have here in Mason Graham. They could also go Tedero McMillan and try to get a weapon for Bryce Young, but I think that they're going to wait till later in the draft. I think that's why they brought it back Adam Thielen to kind of give him, the weapons that he had last year and then bring in a younger piece that could develop in a year or two that they're going to take in a later round. So Mason Graham, he's one of the better D tackles. He's a little bit undersized, but he's going to do a very good job of just wreaking havoc on the interior and upgrade that Panthers defense that is one of the worst in the NFL. Number 9, New Orleans Saints, Jahad Campbell. This is a guy that's been rising up boards recently. He's very versatile. He's a major weapon for multiple, whatever defense coordinator gets him. And I think Brandon Staley would be able to use him in multitude of ways. They need to get younger and cheaper and add to that defense or that offensive line. Here they go with Jahad Campbell. And really, he's a guy, I see him more in the middle, but of the first round, but he's really been rising up a lot of boards recently. You can see it in Mel Kiper's mock, Daniel Jeremiah's mock. Both of them have him going very high, and I think this is someone that's going to go higher and is rated higher by NFL teams and most social media presences. Chicago Bears go Will Campbell. This one's an interesting one. I think that they're really going to try to get Ashton Jeanty, but with Will Campbell, you bring him in, he could be an offensive piece and a rotational player. Here, you might think that if they bring in Will Campbell, they would have to trade Braxton Jones. Not necessarily, because if you want to play him at guard, maybe Jonah Jackson ends up struggling like he did last year. He could easily come in and slot in for Jonah Jackson still if that doesn't work out. And then maybe in a year or two, you don't pay Braxton Jones, and then you move him out to left tackle. I personally don't think Will Campbell can play guard. I think he plays too high with a too high of a pad level. He's 6'6". He doesn't really have the best feet in the world. He kind of gets beat a lot on the inside. So I'm not a big Will Campbell guy. I wouldn't take him here, especially to play guard. But the Bears, obviously, with that Ben Johnson resume, they had a dominant offense line in Detroit, and that would be another thing that they could do here in Chicago to kind of replicate that. The 49ers go with Jahdae Barron. Barron's been rising up a lot of boards recently, obviously, throughout this offseason with with the NFL draft that he ended up having. He's a very consistent player on tape, and he's able to pretty much have great ball hawking skills. His ball skills are one of the best in this draft out from the corner. And he could really play in the slot or on the outside, either one of them. And the 49ers, they lost a lot in free agency. They lost Tre'Davious Ward. They lost Drake Greenlaw. They ended up losing Fuaga at the safety position. So there's a lot of guys that they ended up losing. And Johnny Barron would come in and help out in that secondary and a Robert Saleh scheme that come in as their defensive coordinator. And where he had great corners with the Jets. And that would be another thing where he would want to upgrade that secondary position. The Cowboys, this is another one that's starting to become common, is Matthew Golden. I think the Cowboys are going to look more towards defense, but or Omarion Hampton at running back here at number 12. But I also would not be shocked with Golden. Golden was a guy, anytime that they needed a big play at Texas, it was always Golden. And he could be a guy that pairs up with CeeDee Lamb very well. And like here, Jeremiah says they would give CeeDee Lamb a partner who could take the top off defenses with more than just his speed. He had a crazy day at the NFL Combine. He ended up running the fastest 40 out of the receivers, and he showed his quickness and being able to take the top off there with just that speed and his route running ability. And you've seen that at Texas throughout the year with several different pieces, and this is would be a great complementary piece for CeeDee Lamb. I just think that they would end up going defense here. The Miami Dolphins are going Malachi Starks. I think he ends up falling here, but like he said, Javon Hollins ended up leaving a free agency. He went with the Titans, and he is more of a Malachi Starks could be someone that could step in immediately and replace Javon Holland. Except I really think the Dolphins go offensive line here. They need to be able to protect Tua, but safety is also a need, so they could end up seeing that with two offensive tackles here on the board, they're going to go with the best player available and go Malachi Starks, somebody that's going to be able to fit in and replace Javon Holland. The Colts, they go with Tyler Warren. This is their dream pick. I think this is what they would want. Most of the time, Tyler Warren is taken in the top 10 in most mocks. He's a really versatile player. He can line up pretty much anywhere. He's more that George Kittle type tight end. And I think the Colts, based on what they did, they went out and attacked defense heavily and had a great free agency with it. They also brought in Daniel Jones just to be a little bit of competition for Anthony Richardson. But Anthony Richardson, I think they're going to set him up to where they're going to give him all the weapons possible, and by doing that, they're going to be drafting Tyler Warren to try to help him out and help with his development. This year is really going to be a year where they're going to see if Anthony Richardson is the future or not, and by doing that, with bringing in guys like Tyler Warren to be able to tell that, because if he can't work with those weapons like Jonathan Taylor and Tyler Warren in there, then he's not going to be able to be the future. And I think that's really what they're trying to do is just give Anthony Richardson the best weapons. The Atlanta Falcons, they go with Will Johnson here. This is a guy that could end up falling down the boards quite a bit. He's been a little bit questionable with his inconsistencies that have been on tape. A lot of people are questioning his speed, but he has some of the most pick sixes in college football last year. He did miss his time with injuries, though. I don't think that's really going to be an issue. And the Falcons desperately do need corner. It's somebody that they can pair up with AJ Terrell, who they have. I think that they're going to look to go a little bit more edge, but it looks like in this draft, some of the edge pieces are falling down a lot of the boards. So if a lot of the teams don't really see the edge, I could easily see the Falcons going to address the corner position and be CB2 for Will Johnson alongside AJ Terrell. The Arizona Cardinals are going with Gray Zabel. Gray Zabel is probably the guy that rose up the boards a lot throughout the offseason, probably the most, and he dominated at the Senior Bowl and in his final season at North Dakota State. He's a guy that can play any of the five positions. He can play center, guard, tackle. I think his best fit would be with the Seahawks, but the Cardinals, they desperately need offensive line help to be able to help out Kyler Murray. They ended up attacking the defense and free agency. They ended up signing Josh Sweat. I also think this could be a sneaky spot for some of the receivers. Tetairoa McMillan's on the board still, and Golden ended up going before Tetairoa McMillan, so that could be a spot here. Tetairoa McMillan pairing him with Marvin Harrison Jr. and giving Kyler Murray a little bit of weapons, but he definitely does need protection. The Cardinals O-line hasn't been elite for a very long time. It's been kind of an average group. They have Paris Johnson there that they drafted a couple of years ago. Now they're going to end up trying to help him with the interior in this mock. The Bengals are going with Mike Green. The Bengals are a questionable group. They ended up just signing Jamar Chase and they ended up signing T. Higgins, the two biggest wide receiver contracts. And they still haven't been able to agree with a contract with Trey Hendrickson or if they're going to trade him. But their defense definitely does need to be upgraded. Their defense was not very good last year, and it's not going to be very good because all they did was lose pieces. They didn't go out and sign any defensive players in free agency. And Mike Green, I think, would be the fit that would come in. He ended up being the most productive edge player in college football last year. He had the most sacks, he had the most tackle for losses at that edge position, and him to come in and hopefully I think that they're going to get the Trey Hendrickson contract solved, and I think they're going to sign him back for next year. So he would be a great pairing with Trey Hendrickson, and to have Mike Green and both of them on the same edge, it would be similar to The Browns were to get Abdul Carter and Myles Garrett. It's pretty much the same instance there. You want to make sure that you have a great edge pairing to be able to get after that quarterback and to address other areas. It makes your secondary a lot better if you can get after the quarterback very quickly with your defensive line. The Seattle Seahawks are going Colson Loveland. They still need interior offensive line, I think. I think that they could end up going with a couple of the other guys in this draft to be able to go after one of the guards and one of the offensive linemen. But Colson Loveland, they desperately need a tight end. They still have Noah Fant, but he hasn't really been doing a whole lot. Loveland is ranked higher than what people think. In Daniel Jeremiah's big board, he's ranked in the top 10. He's more of that Brock Bowers type guy that's going to line up in the slot and be more your receiving tight end and be able to be effective that way with getting the ball out very quick. And I think it's something Sam Darnold's going to need, especially if they don't upgrade the offensive line. They're going to have to get that ball out quick, and Loveland could be that option to be able to get the ball out very quickly. Sam Darnold was able to do that effectively in Minnesota with them bringing him in. So that makes sense that they would go here. I just think that they would need to go more of an interior offensive line. They just brought in Cooper Kupp and still have JSN, and to add Loveland to that is definitely getting a lot of good pieces for Sam Darnold. Number 9, Tampa Bay Buccaneers are getting Donovan Inzariku from Boston College. I still can't pronounce his name, but he had a ton of sacks. He ended up having 16 and a half sacks last year, which is a whole lot. And this is a guy, he was kind of seen as a late first round pick. A lot of people are starting to sneak him up a little bit more. Tampa needs an edge piece. They ended up bringing in a lot of their guys. They brought back Chris Godwin. They ended up signing Hassan Reddick to a 1 year prove it deal. A lot of their guys ended up getting old on that defense line. They still have Vita Vea. They still have Levante Davis, David, who's getting older, and he would the edge out of Boston College here, Donovan would be able to come in and be able to execute very well. And be able to step in alongside with Hassan Reddick on that 1 year prove it deal to try to be able to get after quarterbacks and make a difference for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Denver Broncos, I think that they're going to try to just get a weapon for Bo Nix, and that's a weapon in Amarion Hampton. Javonte Williams ended up leaving in free agency. They ended up letting him walk. And the Broncos brought in a lot of guys on defense, and they ended up bringing in Evan Ingram in free agency. So I think that kind of takes away them being able to draft tight end in this draft. I think that the really only piece that they would need is wide receiver or running back. And Amarion Hampton is a big back, and I think him compared to Genty is a lot closer than what people think. He's 6 foot, so he's bigger than Genty, and I think he's just as good as Genty. And I think he's going to be a first round pick no matter what. And I think the Broncos recognize that, and Sean Payton is going to look for a weapon in his offense to be able to support Bo Nix in that running game a little bit more. That was pretty much not very good last year, which led to Bo Nix having to get the ball out a little bit quicker and just taking what the defense gives them because they couldn't run the ball very well. And that would change with Amarion Hampton. And I think he's one of the better running backs. He's by far the number 2 running back. I think he's a lot closer to Genty than what people give him credit. Pittsburgh Steelers going with Jackson Dart. I do think Jackson Dart is going to be a first round pick when it's all said and done. And it looks like that they're going to sign Aaron Rodgers, but obviously you need to bring in somebody to take over after Rodgers because he's 41 years old. But the Steelers going with Jackson Dart here is definitely interesting. Like I said, I think he's going to be a first round pick. It just depends on the team that's going to end up trading up to get him here, or the Steelers are just going to take him here at 21, and he would be the guy that would sit for a year and be able to take over after Aaron Rodgers is done. I think Mike Tomlin, they've been searching for their future quarterback ever since Ben Roethlisberger retired, and they haven't been able to find him, and Jackson Dart could be an option. I really do like his arm strength and his quick decision making, but there's always been questions with Lane Kiffin's offense, with quarterbacks translating to the NFL from his offense. So that's kind of the big question. But he has great accuracy, he has a big arm, and he's everything you want a quarterback. I really do like Jackson Dart. I just don't like him any higher than this point. I think this is the highest they should possibly go, and I wouldn't take him any higher than this. But some team is going to take him in the later half of the first round just to get that 5th year option with him. Number 2, the Chargers. Tedero McMillan falls down the board quite a bit here. He Just had his pro day. He ran a 4.5. He's 6'5", huge receiver. Reminds me of kind of like a Drake London or a Mike Evans type build, that type of build. And the Chargers ended up attacking multiple positions in free agency, but they still need the receiver position. With Omarion Hampton off the board, I think that they end up going with Tedder McMillan here. It makes a lot of sense for him. Justin Herbert still needs better options. I like Lad McConkey just as much as the next guy, but I don't think he's a true number one. I think he's a very high end number two receiver, and Tedder McMillan can step in and be your number one receiver. Quentin Johnston hasn't really been what they hoped where they drafted him, and he's been kind of disappointing. So hopefully Tedder McMillan can kind of take that spot of Quentin Johnson was out of TCU since he's been disappointing in the last couple of years in the league. The Packers, they need corner. Are they going to trade Jair Alexander? He ended up requesting a trade, but they ended up drafting his replacement here in Maxwell Harrison. This is another guy that blew up the combine. He ended up running lightning fast. I think he ran like a 4.3 at the combine, if I remember correctly. He ends up having great cover skills, and with his speed, he can recover a lot if he ends up getting beat in the SEC. His real issue is his tackling, and that's one of the biggest concerns with him is that his tackling is not very good. He's not very physical. He's kind of a little bit small. So that's kind of the question with Harrison. But he has all the skills and all the skills that you would need in a corner. A lot of these corners in this draft are great ball hawks. It's just that his tackling and his aggressiveness is kind of a concern at corner. But that in the past, Sauce Gardner had that same issue and concern. They didn't tackle very well, and he also didn't tackle very well this year. But Harrison, the Packers need a corner. I think this could be a pick where they could end up going with edge here, or it could be a shocking offensive line pick here for Green Bay as well. But Harrison ends up solving an issue for him and pretty much being that Jair Alexander replacement once they end up trading him. The Vikings, this is a pick I had in my mock draft that I ended up putting out, which if you haven't seen it, please go and check it out on the channel. But they ended up taking Nick Emmanwori here. He had one of the best NFL combines in NFL history from a safety, and that really kind of put a light. I think he's going to end up being the first safety off the board, and the Vikings need secondary help in free agency. They went out and they attacked the offensive line. They signed Will Fries, Ryan Kelly, and they ended up attacking the defense line as well, signing Jonathan Allen. So I think Emmanwori here could come in, and he's going to be that Harrison Smith replacement that they would need. He's in year 14. I think he's about done, and he's going to be done here in a year or two and retire. So they need a young safety to be able to come in and learn from him and take over once he's done, and to help out that secondary that was very bad last year. Houston Texans, the tackles fall a little bit here, and this makes sense. They ended up signing Kelvin Banks here. They ended up trading Laremy Tunsil. The Texans had a very questionable free agency. They traded Kenyon Green, Laremy Tunsil, pretty much a lot of their key offensive line pieces. And in the playoffs, CJ Stroud ended up getting hit a lot and sacked a lot. So you would think that they'd want to keep one of the best left tackles in football, but I think that pretty much points to them trying to replace him in the draft, and they're going to be looking and are pretty confident that one of these guys are going to be available. And Kelvin Banks is my favorite offensive lineman in this class. He can run block. He has aggressiveness. He ends up driving his feet and gets a lot of movement in the run game, while he's also able to pretty much pass a lot and or pass block very well and has good feet, and he keeps his hands on the defenders to where they don't really cause any pressures or end up getting the quarterback a lot. So it makes a lot of sense to be able to protect CJ Stroud. This one's a little bit surprising. The Rams go Trey Amos. I think that they're still going to look to go offensive line, but Daniel Jeremiah says here the only question I had about Amos was his pure speed. And at the combine, he put that to rest with a 4.43. So with Amos, a lot of people have had him in the second round. Lately, he's been starting to sneak up into the late first at this point for a lot of different guys. The Rams could attack corner, yes, if some of those guys are on the board. I don't think a lot of the corners end up going in the first round here. I think that they would go more tackle here to protect Stafford. But who knows? It does make sense. It is a position of need, so they end up going Trey Amos. The Ravens here, interior defense line, that ended up being an issue towards the end of the year. And here they're going to end up picking Derek Harmon. I am kind of shocked because this is some of the edge pieces are falling a little bit. Some of the interior defensive line guys. Derek Harmon has, a very great motor. He has outstanding effort. And I think Baltimore will really see that and want that, and he's oftentimes very disruptive. I just think Walter Nolan would be a higher pick, but here Walter Nolan falls down the board a little bit, and they end up preferring Derek Harmon, and it really fits well in that Ravens defense. They really do need an interior piece to be more disruptive and stop the run in general. The Lions, they end up getting their piece where they end up pairing him up with Aiden Hutchinson. They get Mykel Williams. Mykel Williams has all the tools in the world. He reminds me a lot of Trayvon Walker from a couple of years ago. He's very athletic, huge, 6'5", has great wingspan that you would want in an edge piece. And the Lions, their Zadarius Smith was good, but he didn't really work out a whole lot that they would have wanted last year with Aiden Hutchinson. So Mykel Williams coming in, he would be kind of that piece that would go and be able to go for the next couple of years if they can develop him very well with Aiden Hutchinson, and that's really what the Lions need. I think this could be a sneaky spot for an offensive lineman as well, since they lost Kevin Zeitler in free agency. But the Lions are really kind of a guessing game because they've lost pretty much their whole coaching staff. So it's going to be interesting to see how they try to build that back up, and what these new coaches that they're going to have at the different coordinator spots, and how Dan Campbell is going to play it in the draft. The Washington Commanders, they're going with corner. They go Azariah Thomas from Florida State. This is a guy who's very rangy. He's very long, and he has pretty much the build that you would want in corner. He kind of reminds me of a Sauce a little bit. But the Commanders, they attacked several spots in free agency, but they ended up having to let go of Jonathan Allen, and this would pretty much address corner for him, and this would get Dan Quinn to upgrade his defense to try to pretty much get a stop against the Eagles, hopefully, because they're probably pretty much the main guys going against the Eagles, and with them putting up 50 points against them, hopefully this would be able to help their defense and pretty much lock them down a little bit where they go and play them twice next year. The Buffalo Bills go with Kenneth Grant. They definitely do need a pretty much a run stopper on the interior, like it says here. They signed Larry Owen Joby here against the Bills, and most of their free agent signings ended up having to face a 6-game suspension that they just signed, and Kenneth Grant could be able to step in there and help out pretty much being able to stop the run and be that interior piece that they're missing, because the Chiefs were able to still pretty much run the ball all over them. And the Chiefs, they ended up signing Jalen Moore. They had to let go of Joe Thuney, who actually played left tackle for him last year. And I think that they're still going to be looking to add a left tackle piece. Now, Josh Connerly doesn't go in the first round in this mock, it looks like. But Josh Simmons is a great piece. Is somebody that could have been the first tackle off the board, but he ended up getting hurt 6 games through the year and ended up having a knee injury and hurting his knee. So he had to pretty much miss the rest of the year, but he has the upside that the Chiefs are going to want to be able to protect Patrick Mahomes after seeing what happened in the Super Bowl, where he pretty much got hit every single play. And then the Eagles, the rich get richer as Shemar Stewart ends up falling to him here. And this is similar, like Jeremiah said, what happened with Nolan Smith a couple years ago when they picked him. Shemar Stewart is a crazy athlete, blew up the combine like most of the guys end up rising up the board. And he didn't really have the production to back it up, but the Eagles, they need another edge piece after letting Josh Sweat go. So they still have their interior with Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter. So they need another edge piece to bring in, and Shemar Stewart pretty much falls into their lap and pretty much gives them what they need to be able to help out and to retool and pretty much reload into the next season, to pretty much try to get as much pressure on the quarterback like they've been able to build last year. So this is Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft and pretty much what I thought of it. Please make sure to like the video, comment down below anything you agreed or disagree with, and make sure to subscribe to the channel for future NFL content that I'm going to be putting out. And thanks for watching.
Yeah, feel like John Moran. Need a triple-double. Told him check the stats. Yeah, I got a couple. I don't drop the ball. Now I never fumble. I'm the MVP. Now I feel like Russell. Feel like John Moran. Need a triple-double. Told him check the stats. Yeah, I got a couple.